Have you ever watched a child your own, or perhaps someone else's, struggling with their emotions? Their face crumples, their small fists shake, their voice breaks in a raw outburst. In those moments they are simply being. They are feeling. And then, suddenly you hear it. Don't cry, or be a big boy divided by girl. In those few words, something irreversible happens. The first seed is planted, the quiet but insidious lesson that emotions are something to be managed, hidden, controlled. It's a lesson so subtle, so often repeated, that it almost becomes invisible. A parent says it, a teacher says it, a peer says it. It's as if the child is being told, your feelings are not welcome here. They are dangerous. They will make you weak. The message is clear. Do not show vulnerability. It is not strength, it is something to be hidden. It begins early. At first, it's innocent. It's a way to calm the child down, to stop the tantrum, to avoid an uncomfortable scene in public. But in that moment, something shifts, something deep. The child learns that their emotions are not a natural part of being human, but a problem to be solved. Their raw, untamed feelings become something that must be managed, buried beneath layers of restraint and politeness. And so, they start to shut down little by little, day by day. They begin to believe that the parts of them that feel too much, that react too strongly, are unacceptable. And before long, they are no longer just hiding their feelings from others, they are hiding them from themselves. The psychological toll of this early conditioning is profound. As the child grows, the struggle to reconcile their inner world with the outer world becomes an ongoing battle. Inside, emotions churn, but outwardly, they are taught to wear a mask, one that hides the truth of what they are experiencing. Over time, this disconnection becomes a fracture. The child learns to disconnect from their emotions. They are no longer part of the process of feeling, they are merely observers of it. The emotional landscape inside them begins to grow dimmer, and they stop recognizing their own emotions altogether. The child, once so in tune with their own rawness, becomes an adult who is no longer sure how to feel or express those feelings. This fracture, the one that begins with the quiet directive to don't cry or don't get angry, will follow them for the rest of their life. It becomes their internalized instruction, and as they move through the world, they will continue to follow it. Hide what's inside. Keep it under control. Don't let it show. But what does it cost them? What does it cost you, as you look back at your own life and wonder how many feelings you've buried over the years? The tension here lies in the slow, creeping realization that the very thing we are taught to suppress, the most human part of us, has the potential to shape our future in ways we cannot yet comprehend. The silent instruction may have come from well-meaning people, but its effects ripple outward, subtly and inexorably, shaping how we relate to ourselves and others. Have you been taught to hide your feelings? To disconnect from your own emotions? To silence your heart? And if so, what has it cost you along the way? Have you ever wondered if that instruction, so quietly whispered to you in childhood, is now the very thing that keeps you from living fully, authentically? As a child grows, the need to protect themselves from the world becomes not just a survival instinct, but a learned behavior. Early on, they learn that their raw emotions, anger, sadness, frustration, fear, are not only unacceptable, but unsafe to express. The instinct to hide these emotions is subtle at first, but as the years unfold, a new, more insidious skill takes shape: masking. Masking is the act of donning a new face, one that hides the true self beneath a carefully constructed exterior. As a child, you may not even be aware of it. The first mask could simply be a smile when you feel tears welling up, a laugh when you want to scream. Over time, masking becomes second nature. It's no longer a conscious choice, but an automatic reaction. The child learns to become what the world expects them to be, to mold themselves into an image that is easier to accept. But behind that mask, something is lost, something essential is buried. Beneath the smile, behind the friendly face, the true self retreats, fading into the shadows. The child becomes someone they no longer recognize, not because they've changed, but because they've been forced to hide who they truly are. This emotional shield, this mask, is a weapon one that protects the child from rejection, from ridicule, from vulnerability. But it comes at a steep price. The psychological toll of constantly performing, of becoming someone you're not, is more than just exhausting. It's a war against the self. The person you present to the world is always at odds with the person you truly are. There is a constant tension between who you are on the inside and the face you show the world. And that tension can tear you apart, leaving you feeling fractured and incomplete. As the child grows into adulthood, this battle becomes even more complex. The mask has become so ingrained that it feels like part of their identity. They wear it not just for others, but for themselves. In their pursuit of external validation, they forget how to feel the emotions they once knew so deeply. They become experts at suppressing their true selves, at playing roles they were never meant to play. The result is a person who no longer knows how to connect with their own feelings, let alone express them to others. The emotional cost is staggering. There is isolation, not from the world, but from the very essence of who they are. They may have hundreds of acquaintances, countless superficial interactions, but no one truly knows them, not because they are unlovable, but because they are unseen. And in that silence, in that disconnection, confusion sets in. The person behind the mask wonders who they are anymore, questioning what is real and what has been fabricated. The external world may accept the mask. It may smile back, nod in agreement, and offer praise. But inside, there is only a hollow echo, a person trapped in a war they can no longer win. They've lived so long behind the mask that they no longer know what it would be like to take it off, to be seen, to be vulnerable, to be real. Those ideas are terrifying. This chapter invites you to ask, what is hidden behind your mask? What emotions, thoughts, and desires have you buried in the name of safety or approval? And, perhaps most hauntingly, what happens when you no longer recognize the person behind the mask? When the performance becomes so ingrained that you forget what it means to simply be? As you reflect on these questions, remember, the mask may protect, but it also isolates. It may shield you from the world, but it also keeps you from truly living in it. Have you ever been afraid of feeling? Not just afraid of the pain or the hurt, but afraid of what might happen if you actually allowed yourself to feel at all. It's a subtle, insidious fear, one that creeps in quietly, without warning, as the years pass. The more we suppress our emotions, the more we tell ourselves that feelings are something to be avoided, the deeper that fear grows. It's not just about pain anymore, it's about the unknown. What happens when we crack open the door to our emotions and let them flood out? For most of our lives, we've been taught to manage, to control, to hide. We've been conditioned to see emotions as weaknesses, things to be buried under layers of composure and strength. And so, we do. We push them down, bury them deep inside, convinced that if we ignore them long enough, they'll eventually go away. But they don't. They never do. Instead, the longer we suppress them, the more they begin to simmer beneath the surface. And then, one day, the fear emerges. What if, one day, I can't keep them contained anymore? This is the fear of feeling the fear that, once we open the floodgates, we'll be swept away. It's the terrifying thought that our emotions will consume us, that the vulnerability we so desperately try to avoid will overwhelm our very existence. What if we can't stop the wave once it begins? What if we can't control the torrent of grief, of anger, of despair, or even joy? It's a fear that makes us tremble at the idea of breaking down, of crying in front of others, of losing control in a world that demands we stay composed at all costs. The fear isn't just about the pain of feeling. It's about the fear of not knowing what we will do once we allow ourselves to feel. We fear the chaos that might emerge, the overwhelming nature of our emotions. We fear being swallowed by them, afraid that once we let go, we'll lose ourselves entirely. What if our sadness is too much to bear? What if our anger is too violent to control? What if beneath it all, we are nothing but a fragile, broken mess, too raw, too human for the world to accept. The tension in this chapter mounts as we come face to face with this deep, uncomfortable truth. The more we suppress our feelings, the more we disconnect from them, the more we lose ourselves in the process. The emotional numbness, the void we feel, becomes a prison of our own making. The longer we hide from our emotions, the less we know how to experience them. We become strangers to our own hearts, lost in the wilderness of our suppressed desires, our buried grief, and our unspoken fears. And so, we live in constant fear not of the feelings themselves, but of what will happen if we let them out. We silence ourselves, telling ourselves that it's better to suppress than to confront the chaos within. But here's the unsettling question. How many times have we told ourselves that feeling is dangerous? How many times have we convinced ourselves that it's better to stay numb, to stay safe, than to face the storm of emotion waiting just beneath the surface? The journey here is one of reckoning and invitation to confront the cost of emotional isolation. What happens when we fear our feelings more than we fear hiding them? When does the fear of feeling become more suffocating than the fear of losing control? As you reflect on your own emotional landscape, think about the moments when you've avoided feeling. What was it that kept you from confronting your emotions? Was it the fear of being overwhelmed? The fear of being seen as weak? And what happens if we choose, for once, to step into the chaos, to allow ourselves to feel fully and without restraint? From the moment you take your first step into the world, society begins its subtle yet unrelenting lesson. Emotions are to be controlled. They are liabilities, weaknesses that must be hidden if you are to survive in a world that values productivity, strength, and control. It's not just family or the people closest to us who teach us to suppress our feelings, it's the very fabric of the society we live in. Every billboard, every news broadcast, every social interaction reinforces the same message. Don't feel too much. Don't cry. Don't show weakness. Don't be vulnerable. The world tells us that those things are not only unnecessary, but dangerous. The pressure is everywhere. In the workplace, vulnerability is seen as a flaw. There, emotions are treated as distractions, as something that interferes with success and efficiency. The ideal worker is someone who can show up every day, devoid of emotion, capable of pushing through even the most difficult circumstances without a hint of personal struggle. In the corporate world, there is no room for tears, for doubt, or for emotional breakdowns. The mask of stoicism is worn proudly, often at the cost of personal well-being. You must perform, you must produce. And any sign of emotional weakness is swiftly met with disdain, or worse, punishment. And then, of course, there's the world of social media. Here, emotions are not just suppressed, they are curated. You see perfect lives, filtered and polished to create an illusion of happiness, success, and composure. Emotions are reduced to status updates and photos, carefully chosen to fit into a narrative that doesn't reveal the chaos, the rawness, the vulnerability that pulses beneath the surface. Behind each smile and selfie is a fear of being too much, of sharing something real, something unrefined. To be emotionally authentic in this space is to risk rejection, to expose yourself to the judgment of 1,000 anonymous eyes. The pressure to fit into this curated version of reality is suffocating, and slowly we begin to lose touch with what is real. We begin to lose ourselves. But the emotional cost of living in a society that rejects emotional authenticity is staggering. As we strive to meet the demands of a world that values composure over authenticity, we disconnect from the very things that make us human. We numb ourselves, believing that feeling is something to be avoided. And in that numbness, we lose our connection to ourselves and to others. We live in a world where, even though we are surrounded by people, we are more alone than ever before. The effects of this emotional suppression are deep and lasting. Mental health struggles begin to take root, silently at first, and then grow more pervasive. Anxiety, depression, and emotional numbness become the quiet companions of those who have been taught to suppress their feelings for too long. The soul becomes weary from the constant pressure to conform, to hide, to pretend. The result is an epidemic of alienation, people surrounded by others but unable to truly connect. We've been taught to live behind masks, and in doing so, we've forgotten how to be vulnerable, how to be real. As you listen to this, ask yourself, how much of your emotional life has been shaped by society's expectations? How many of your feelings have been hidden away in the name of fitting in, of protecting yourself from the judgment of others? How much of yourself have you lost in the process? The world tells us that emotional authenticity is a burden, a risk that we cannot afford to take. But at what cost? Is the price of fitting in worth the loss of who we truly are? This chapter leaves you with a crucial question. In a world that demands so much from us emotionally, how can we ever hope to live truthfully if we don't first acknowledge the emotional isolation that comes from constantly hiding our true selves? There is a belief we've all been taught, almost from the moment we're able to understand the world around us. If you can control your emotions, you'll be in control of your life. But here's the painful truth that no one tells you. The more you try to control your feelings, the more they control you. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? But the deeper you go, the more you realize it's not just a contradiction, it's the trap we've all fallen into. From an early age, we are taught to suppress, to silence the chaos inside. Feelings, especially the ones deemed negative or unproductive, are something to be avoided. Crying is a sign of weakness. Anger is destructive. Sadness is something to fix. The message is clear. If we can just keep our emotions in check, we will avoid the vulnerability, the messiness, the chaos that comes with feeling. We believe that by hiding our emotions, we can dodge pain, protect ourselves from the world's harshness, and maintain control. But the deeper we bury them, the more insidious they become. Repressed feelings don't simply vanish, they sink deeper into our subconscious, festering in places we can't see or touch. They grow in power, quietly building pressure, until they inevitably resurface. And when they do, they rarely come back in the way we expect. Anger erupts in unexpected moments. Sadness floods over us at the most inconvenient times, and the anxiety we thought we'd controlled slips from the shadows, overtaking our ability to think clearly. This is the dangerous fallacy at the heart of emotional suppression. The idea that we can simply bury our emotions and they'll disappear. In reality, emotions don't go away. They build, they intensify, and they demand to be felt. They shape our behavior in ways we can't predict. A person might think they've mastered their anger, only for it to spill out in a burst of rage when they least expect it. Or they might believe they've conquered their sadness, only for it to seep into their thoughts, quietly draining their energy and joy. We might hide our fear, only to find it paralyzes us in moments that demand courage. The tension builds here because of the psychological battle that ensues. The person who suppresses their emotions is never truly at peace. Instead, they live in a constant state of quiet unrest. There is a constant undercurrent of anxiety, anger, or sadness that never quite goes away. It's as if you're walking on a tightrope, always balancing on the edge, always afraid that the smallest misstep will send you tumbling into emotional chaos. You don't know how to escape it because you've been told that control is the only answer, and yet, no matter how hard you try, the emotions always find their way back, stronger than before. This chapter paints a vivid portrait of someone struggling to keep their feelings locked away. Their life becomes a delicate balancing act, a fight against the tide. They can keep the lid on their emotions for only so long before the pressure becomes too much. What happens when the floodgates open? What happens when the dam they've built to control their emotions finally breaks? The consequences are often destructive. Relationships strain under the weight of unexpressed feelings, mental health suffers, and a person finds themselves trapped in a cycle they can't escape. The more they suppress, the more their feelings rise up to define their existence. The tension in this chapter is palpable. It's the psychological fight that many of us endure in silence, the constant suppression of emotions, the desperate belief that if we just keep it all together, everything will be okay. But deep down, we know the truth. This battle is futile. Emotions cannot be controlled. They can be buried, but they can never be eradicated. So, what is the alternative? What happens when we stop trying to control, stop trying to suppress, and instead begin to confront the very feelings we've been taught to hide? As the chapter unfolds, you are invited to reflect on the futility of emotional suppression. Is it truly possible to control our emotions, or is that desire simply an illusion, a dangerous fantasy that keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-denial? The more we try to hide, the more our feelings shape our lives, often in ways we cannot predict, control, or even understand. And so, we are left with a haunting question. What happens when we finally let go of the illusion of control? There comes a moment in every life, whether quietly whispered in the dark or screamed aloud in a moment of crisis, when the truth must be faced. Your feelings have always been a part of you. They were never something to hide, to suppress, or to fear. They were the core of your humanity, the very pulse of your existence. And yet for so long, you've run from them, hiding behind walls built from shame, fear, and the belief that vulnerability is a weakness. But healing begins when you stop fearing your emotions and start listening to them. It is not an easy journey. It is not one that can be undertaken lightly. The walls we've built around ourselves to keep our emotions contained are high, thick, and fortified with years of conditioning. The fear of being overwhelmed by what we've kept buried is a constant companion. We fear that, if we open ourselves up, the floodgates will open and we will be swept away, consumed by the very feelings we've worked so hard to suppress. This fear is real, but it is also the greatest illusion we face, the belief that by hiding, we are protecting ourselves. In reality, we are only suffocating the parts of us that need to be set free. The path to healing starts with a choice to acknowledge the feelings we've been avoiding, to accept them as part of us, not as invaders, but as integral parts of our being. The process of healing begins with vulnerability, not the vulnerability that makes us weak, but the kind that makes us strong. It is the strength that comes from standing in the truth of who we are, allowing our emotions to surface without judgment or shame. As we begin to open the door to our feelings, we start to reclaim our humanity. For so long, we have denied ourselves the full spectrum of what it means to be human: love, pain, joy, grief, fear, and everything in between. These emotions, once feared, are the very things that connect us to others and to ourselves. They are not weaknesses. They are the threads that bind us to the world, to one another, and to our truest selves. But the journey is not without its struggles. The walls may crumble slowly, and the floodgates may open in unpredictable ways. The emotional truth we have long suppressed will come rushing forward, sometimes quietly, other times in torrents that feel overwhelming. But here lies the power of this journey. By acknowledging these feelings, by expressing them instead of hiding them, we begin to free ourselves. We stop running from our emotions and start living with them in a way that is honest, raw, and real. The tension builds here. The process of rediscovery is never smooth. As we confront our deepest fears, our fear of being overwhelmed, of being vulnerable, of being seen for who we truly are, we realize that it is in this very confrontation that we begin to heal. We are no longer fighting to hide, to mask, or to suppress. We are opening ourselves to the possibility of freedom. This chapter invites you to reflect on the cost of emotional suppression and the reward of embracing vulnerability. What would it mean to truly feel again? To allow yourself to let go of the masks you've so carefully crafted and simply be. To stop running from your emotions and instead sit with them, listen to them, and let them guide you back to yourself. Healing is not the absence of pain. It is the embrace of it, the ability to walk through the storm of emotion without fear, to emerge on the other side not broken but whole. The strength lies not in control, but in surrendering to the truth of what we feel. When we do this, we find a freedom that we've spent years searching for: freedom to live fully, to love deeply, and to connect authentically with the world around us.